They came in when the grid crashed. Never saw them coming. Called themselves the China America Corp. Lies Incorporated. We all work for them now. Hired me to find a computer virus, destroy it before it makes the jump to human host. Some say that's impossible, but I've already seen it happen. In my dreams.
Hello and welcome to the show, Robert Leeshock from Earth Final Conflict, who's going to be talking to Marx, Pyle and I about a new project he's been working on, which is seeking crowdfunding on Indiegogo. It's a project called God Machine. How are you doing, Robert?
I'm doing well. Really nice to be here with you guys.
Okay, well first off, I'll get the ball rolling by asking, how did God Machine come about, and how much creative input did you have into it? Because I believe you're not only one of the stars, if not the star, one of the main characters, but you're also a producer on it.
Yeah, I have. It's one of those like friend of a friend who I guess wrote a script, and sitting in your sort of like classic Greek diner in Brooklyn, the guy basically passes the manuscript to me, and I took it home, and it started out. I think the title was "I Am Girl." And I said, well, I'm going to have a tough time pulling that off. I don't think I make the most attractive woman. And so eventually it did evolve into this, new working title, or actually it's going to stay God Machine. But it had all these pretty cool elements. I guess the most provocative one that I always talk about is the eventual sort of Chinese corporate takeover of certain states within the United States. So to me, I think I was just hooked by this really, really, provocative scenario, which, could be very, very well true in a matter of, 10 to 20 years. Consider our indebted nature to, the ubiquitous Chinese. But sort of in broad strokes, it had that premise as well as some really, really fascinating science, with a little bit of sort of Eastern mysticism thrown in there. So the combination, and also some pretty cool like martial arts fight scenes, which I don't know if they're still in there, but the combination of those 3 or 4 elements, and I said, oh wow, this is pretty cool. However, the script always lacks structure, so we've been banging away at the structure of this thing for, I'd say, a good maybe 3 to 4 years.
Cool. Marx, I'm going to hand over to you now, mate.
So you guys went from the story idea to then creating a short film, correct?
Yeah.
And so how's the short film going to differ from the feature film?
This is the crazy creative process that this project has gone through. So I know my limitations as a writer, which is I've never written all those, books you're supposed to read on screenwriting by, what was that, Robert McKee, And so I don't know anything about structure, and we were always looking for somebody who understands structure. So then originally the lead character was going to be played by an Asian American actor. Guy was in I think Karate Kid. His first name is Yuji. I can't remember his last name, but Yuji dropped out of the project because of I guess what he thought maybe the volatile nature of sort of like what Red Dawn went through with portraying the Chinese as, as the devil. And I guess because of his other business pursuits, he decided to back out of the project. So the writer, Richard Craner, I was at a sci-fi convention on Long Island, and I was talking to him on the phone. I said, well, what do you think if I played the lead? So, because I have that, the history of Earth Final Conflict. So, we bandied that about for maybe 2 minutes, and I realized, okay, I just talked myself into, the role. Then I think Rich lives out in the boondocks in some place called Poulsbo, Washington, which is sort of a ferry ride from Seattle into the deep woods of the Pacific Northwest.
Sounds like an alien planet.
What's that?
Sounds like a planet.
Yeah, I thought you said it sounds like a Canadian planet.
That sounds like Canada.
So he has, so his girlfriend, I guess he was building the sets in his girlfriend's detached garage. And she was threatening him and saying, I have to rent this garage out. You can't have your sets in there. You can't, all this whole thing. So he's like, all right, I've got to shoot a short film. So with the problems we were having with the script, he decides he's got a date to shoot the short film. And so I'm waiting for the I guess the script of the short film, and it shows up in my email, and it's 22 pages of indecipherable mishigas, as they like to say in Yiddish, mishigash or whatever. So the 22 pages of the short film, I was like, there's no through line. So I get my friend Scott Gunderson. I said, Scott, we got to work on this thing, because we're shooting this thing in the outside of Seattle, and there was absolutely no narrative through line in the short whatsoever. Mm-hmm. So we show up and we start shooting, and we're writing. My friend Scott and I are rewriting Rich's work. Now, Rich is sort of like, I call him like the genius retard. He has either these brilliant ideas, or he's about as thick-headed as they come. So we're discovering a story within this short film as we go. And I think what we did, to sort of like maybe sum it up, is that I take responsibility, because I am like the executive producer, which means, it's my cold hard cash that went into it. I indulged his sort of unconscious director's auteur's journey through this short film. And as exciting as it was, when we came out the other side and it came to the editing process, I thought that there just wasn't a story there. Mm-hmm. And so he and I just fought vehemently. I threatened to take the footage and drive to a guy I know in Ohio who was supposed to do visual effects, and I was going to edit my version with his team. Oh, it was just great drama. I mean, I remember sitting at the counter I'm at the beach here, drinking 2 6-packs and pounding my fist on the bar, because we had these creative differences about what's working and not working, writing hate emails that I never sent. I mean, it was just absolutely crazy, until eventually a story emerged. And I think that the short film has a really interesting, dynamic, sort of lyrical journey to it. There's nothing straightforward about it, but I think that that's kind of cool.
I mean, I watched it, as I said in the email to you yesterday. I started watching it, but then I had to stop about 5 minutes in, because I had to go to a music class. So I made an effort and I watched it yesterday, and it just sort of like seemed to have a nice flow to it.
It feels like a dream almost, how the imagery comes across.
Yeah, it's almost like I call it sort of like just sort of an unconscious journey. And if maybe it's like, it's trying to figure out a dream the next day and go, I don't know, there was this image and then I found myself over here and there's a white flower. And you kind of like, maybe you piece it together and maybe you don't.
Well, there's a few different ways to interpret certain parts of it, because I would be interested in seeing, is that what you're going to do in the film, though? Are you going to
Here's our challenge now. So what happened was we had another big powwow, another battle on a hill. Is this the hill to take? Is this the hill to die on? So basically what we decided was we're a team of 3 writers. So the other guy, Scott and I decided, all right, here's the plan. We have to sort of rein in this crazy horse. We have all these analogies to say, don't give him too much leash. Make sure he doesn't go off the rails. Just kind of keep him on basically a short leash. So what we decided to do was give him notes on what we thought the short film would be the first act. So we gave Rich notes on the second act. He came back with something that was really linear and something that we could follow. We gave him notes on the third act. He came back again. Then I thought, wow, this is really cool. We're going to achieve both objectives. We'll give people this crazy, unconscious, multi-interpretation beginning. and then we'll take you on a real great like action adventure romp through the second and third acts.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with that is when Rich transcribed the short film to the page to technically be the first act, it's unreadable. It really is. I have a friend of mine who's filming down in Puerto Rico. He went to a bar and he said, Robert, I'm going to read it. He tried twice. He said, Robert, I can't even make sense of this. I said, oh, no. All right. So basically what we did for acts 2 and 3, we've done for act 1. And so now I think we're on the cusp of having a first act that I really think is close to being what we need to sell the project. Mm-hmm. So I think we're going to have actually 2 different projects. I think we're going to have the short film, which is, like I said, it's sort of the auteur's vision. And then hopefully we're going to have a real linear sort of marketable, more accessible, 3-act feature film.
Cool. One thing I kind of found a little bit ironic in this film was the android in question. She was working at a brothel, and I found that kind of ironic, given that sort of like today's day and age, you got STDs, which we've always had and stuff like that, and or the safe sets and stuff like that, and yet they're going to a brothel with androids. And, you'd think with androids, you wouldn't have those problems. And all of a sudden, this one android becomes infected with a virus that can sort of like create the Big Bang. That's kind of funny.
I know, it's like all puns intended, right? The Big Bang, blah, blah, blah,
Like the big bang.
Right.
Was that always in the script to basically have the android lady, with the virus working in a brothel? Was that sort of like always part of it? Or?
I think from the inception, I think she's always been in the brothel. I guess the only thing maybe we've bandied about is, how does she become infected? Sort of like, how and where does she become infected? Uh-huh. Because we've established, that the virus originates in this place called the Forbidden Zone. So, I work with, actually this one director on Earth Final Conflict who looked at the script and he said, hey, Robert, I'll give you a suggestion. He says, have the main character get the virus, from her, in the brothel. Because he said, after all, men are men. He says you can track all major diseases, through the world. And he says, they're always going to start, sort of like, I guess, along trade routes, where men sort of like congregate. But I think what's interesting about it is that when we say virus, virus has a negative connotation to it. And I think the irony is more that this virus is actually a mechanism for transformation and evolution. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's kind of good to sort of like lead people to believe that, this is sort of like, your typical den of iniquity. And yet, what we want to do is show how this really has found the perfect host in this, perfect android, and sort of the quantum leap that this virus allows her to take through, her own transformation. In an ideal sense, we could make it kind of seem a little, sexy, maybe illicit, but I think by the end of the script, we actually wanted to like be shining like a pure light of, hope and inspiration.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I've got to say, I felt the whole brothel thing was actually handled quite well. As in, it was more suggestive, as opposed to sort of like going all out and going the route of, say, something like Spartacus, Blood and Sand.
Right, or Caligula, yeah.
Yeah. So like, obviously as a bloke I prefer the Spartacus Blood and Sand, but I thought, it was quite cleverly handled where you guys did it, because it makes it more accessible to sort of like maybe people that are not old enough to watch Spartacus Blood and Sand.
Well, I think the real challenge that we've always had and this is, you know, a long-standing discussion we've really engaged in, is why is this main character, you know, hitting women over the head with a sledgehammer? And that's the part that it just felt sort of like gratuitously, violent. I never really, you know, until we eventually found out, you know, you could kind of justify and say, well, you know, they're androids, they're not really women. You know, the character John Lee is trying to kill that part of himself that, you know, is mechanical, or, you know, represents his implants, that, you know, basically makes him feel less human. What's interesting is that in the feature script, we kind of like skirt the issue altogether. You know, it is a little bit violent, but it's sort of violent in a different way. So I think we've kind of like excused ourselves from that dilemma.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think it's, oh, well, you know, there was another line in there that my girlfriend listened to, and, you know, and she just, something about a dead baby. And she was just like, Robert, you know, you can't have that line in the short film. And it really is crossing the line. But, you know, it's almost so dastardly and nasty. And I think the writer meant it to be so sort of like nonsensically inhumane that I think it kind of works.
Is that the one where the other soldier, he was left in the thing, I think. Is that the one where the other soldier goes in there and he's commenting about, he's asking the woman how far he can go, and goes, does that mean I can do you doggy while you're eating a dead baby?
Exactly. And that one doesn't really sit well with all the ladies.
Why not?
And then sometimes I realize, I'm like, you know, I've been to a lot of sci-fi conventions, and you realize there are a lot of women there. But, you know, I think sci-fi fans have thicker skin. Mm-hmm. You know, it's kind of like, you know, if you go to a random like focus group of some film, you're like, you know, you walk into this world and you realize, no, this is a world where you turn things on its head. And I think because maybe I've been around it, or maybe my girlfriend's just a nicer person than I am, more sensitive, more compassionate, probably, which I know she is. But then I sometimes think, all right, are we just making a dude's film here? You know?
I'm tempted to say to your girlfriend, well, you know, the thing is, you've always said that women are actually better at multitasking, you know?
It's true. Oh, Jesus, that's funny. That's really funny. It took me a second to get that. Oh, so I think the real challenge we have is to right now, you know, I've had my brother-in-law, my nephew, they read it, or they've watched the short film, they'll read the script, and I think maybe now what we're struggling with, maybe in a sense, is, you know, how likable is the main character? Uh-huh. And, you know, I don't know if he's got to be likable, but I think we're sort of attempting to sort of like, you know, maybe put a little remedy to that as well. Not make it sappy, not make it too sympathetic, but just, I think once you strip away all the sci-fi and all the philosophy, you know, it still has to be a human story or a human struggle on some level.
Mm-hmm. Are you adapting a short film to make it act one in the feature film, or is it going to be spread out and changed?
I think that, I think right now we've evolved to sort of saying, yeah, the short film is going to live on its own, mm-hmm. but whatever we need to do to make the feature, I think, work now, sort of linearly, I think we're going to kind of stick with that. And I think the concepts, maybe the broader concepts of the short film will stay, but I don't think that there's going to be much. There won't be, I think, because the short film never really was that sort of like linear as a narrative anyway. So all those elements will be there, but in varying forms, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
One thing I rather enjoyed, sort of like seeing the scene between yourself and your old buddy Von Fnors from Earth Final Conflict. It kind of brought back memories of some of the exchanges that you had with him on the show. Did you find that the chemistry just flooded back when you did that scene with him?
Well, what's interesting is, Bond's actually he's been through the ringer in his personal life. I mean, it's sort of like he's actually writing his own sort of script based on his crazy, I guess, his crazy life that had turned into. So sort of, I guess, getting back or traveling up to Toronto to film that one scene, because I just thought we needed it. It was actually sort of maybe like meeting up with an old friend, but wondering sort of like, that one eye that says, so how's it really going? Have you, I don't know. I have a big comparison of this film to sort of, what's it, Apocalypse Now? Mm-hmm. We have to, you go up the river to meet, whether it's Kurtz or to meet your own inner demons. And I think that's a lot of what this journey always seems to me like. You're going somewhere to discover something. You have a hunch, what it's like, but you don't really know how it's going to manifest. Mm-hmm. And I guess because Vaughn really, Vaughn has such strong ideas that, he was directing it. He was creating his own sort of like production within a production. It was really pretty wild. I was like, okay, I'm going to indulge him a little bit, and then I have to pull him back. So it was pretty interesting. I mean, especially with his, his shaved head and everything. It was really pretty interesting to see everything that he's got going on in his personal life sort of show up on screen once again.
Mm-hmm. It was a good scene. I kind of wanted to see a little bit more of him, like later on in the short film.
Yeah. I wanted to see him come in at the end, because the way the short film ended, it sort of like it just seemed a little bit too perfect. When she's sort of like she's crying for the first time, and you sort of like you pretty much say, well, that's a human thing.
It's the British side. It's too happy of ending. They all need to die in the end.
Death, destruction, kill. Doesn't anybody torture anymore?
Iron over actor. That's a bit of a bad Doctor Who joke there.
Well, what's great about filmmaking is that we shot the short. I said we have to have Vaughn in this one, because he's a great sort of like marketing ploy, to reunite us. But I always thought that the character of John Lee needed to be sort of seen vis-a-vis, this Asian sort of like domineering force. So we shot the whole short film, probably in August of whatever it was, 2011. And then I guess New Year's Eve, 2011 to 12, I said to my girlfriend, I said, we need this scene. We're driving up to Toronto to shoot the scene with Vaughn. And I said, we need this scene at the beginning of this film. So, we got in my little Honda. We went up there. I borrowed equipment from a friend. I have a Canon 5D Mark II. Special effects guy from Ohio had sound equipment. So we met up in Toronto to shoot this one little scene. And of course, when they came back on my coverage, it was, I don't know, they weren't reading the bars in the frame right or whatever. So I got cut off. So I went to my friend's house in New Jersey, and we went down in his basement and we recreated some sort of backdrop that looked familiar. So on Vaughn's shot, we're in Toronto. On my coverage, we're in my friend's basement in New Jersey. I mean, it's sort of like that magical, hodgepodge of putting together a short film.
Well, that's cool. I didn't notice that.
So the odds of getting, another scene with Vaughn, I was like, all right, man, we've reached the limit.
Yeah, it'd be great to see him in the main film. Well,
the cool thing is that we definitely resolve, the sort of the setup of Vaughn in the main film. There definitely is a Chairman Fong payoff.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about the film and the Indiegogo campaign, because you have a few other sci-fi celebrities that are attached to it, right? Would you like to talk about that?
Yeah, sure. I worked with Marina Sirtis on an episode of Earth Final Conflict, and I guess I didn't understand maybe even at the time what an icon she was. And I guess, maybe somebody must have schooled me later on. And, I had seen her at sci-fi conventions and I was just like, this chick is just super cool. And so, when someone said, no, she is like the epitome of, I guess, what sexual allure for every, I guess, next gen fan. That's so, and I guess I don't. Maybe that was one series that maybe just eluded me. So I didn't really understand how far reaching her sort of like her fan base is.
Yeah, I remember seeing her in Star Trek: The Next Generation when it first came on the air here in the UK. It came on the air here in the UK in '87, I think.
Oh wow!
And I was about 17. I've got to say, I was having feelings of great joy.
And rapture and joy and more joy.
My pants.
Wow.
Well, the great thing is that, I guess, because I saw like a publicity photo of her and it was up on our own website and I was like, oh my God, so then I went back to and saw some of the, the shots, I guess when she was actually in character on the show. And I was like, oh yeah, now I see you're just a sexy little vixen. And she's just, and she's just really, really super cool. So that when I reached out to her, I didn't have her, maybe I had her number at some point, but I called, I think it was maybe her manager or emailed her manager or something like that. And, when I was chatting to her, I realized like, oh, she's just super cool. Mm-hmm. I think what's ironic about, all this like, sci-fi and, cutting edge of all the, she says, Robert, I want nothing to do with Facebook. I said, okay, Marina. So she's just a little, I think she's a little like, I don't want to use the word old school, but she's a little retro.
Yeah, but then again, on Facebook, you do get people, sort of like private messaging the celebrities on Facebook all the time. So I think it's also probably a privacy thing as well for her.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And it's quite understandable. But to be fair, she can play some kick-ass women as well. I've actually seen her, sort of like, in some pretty kick-ass roles as well.
Oh, really?
So she's got both the sex appeal, but she's also got the attitude to sort of like to do kick-ass too.
Mm. Well, I was talking to her, and she said that she's doing a lot of Middle Eastern character stuff now. So she's like maybe like with a Farsi accent. We're going to ask her probably to do maybe a Russian accent in God Machine. So she's really adept, and she's just really, I think, broadening what she's done already. It was really funny. I was at a sci-fi convention in Las Vegas hanging out with Eugene Roddenberry, and there's this guy at the bar next to us, and I didn't really kind of know who it was, but somehow we started talking, and then my buddy Scott says to me, he says, oh, that's LeVar Burton. And all of a sudden now we're like, oh no, maybe it happened later. And I was like, oh man, he could play this Thelios character in God Machine. And it's kind of cool because we're also kind of, fans of, I know him from Roots way back when. Mm-hmm. And then I realized like Eugene Roddenberry is actually kind of, I think, a bit of a fan of LeVar. So I said, hey, Eugene, that's LeVar. He's like, you know what, Robert? I actually don't really know LeVar. So it's kind of funny, when you just assume that everybody knows everybody. So it kind of humanizes this whole thing of like going, wait a second, but that's LeVar. You guys just don't know each other. It's like, no, all right. Like, okay. It's a little my own naivete,
I tell you who would be a really good person if you could actually get her in God Machine. Nichelle Nichols.
Oh yeah.
That'd be that'd be quite a catch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have so Marina's sent me a letter of commitment. So she's on board. what I want to do is kind of continue to dimensionalize her character and, make sure that, she's really got something, fun to play, I guess, for lack of a better word.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything you can tell us about her character? Is her character or a version of her character in the short film at all?
Yeah, she'll play the brothel madam was played by that, I guess her name is Svetlana, is the actual actress in the short. But actually, Marina would take over that role.
Oh, okay.
Is Svetlana's middle name Nut Crusher?
Yes.
That
was a painful scene, yeah.
I winced. I thought, poor guy. I'm not going that place.
Yeah, I told her, I said, just go for it. She was like, really? I mean, because this girl, Svetlana, I think she was a part-time maybe bodybuilder. And, so she's no joke. She can kick some ass as well. So I told her, I said, go ahead, just give it a whirl. That man's nuts. Grab him.
This guy's pain.
Yeah. So the only good thing is maybe Marina will get to do that.
There you go.
Something
You're like, who can I have played that part?
Yes. We'll have to work on that part.
Oh, dear me. Be sure to wear a steel undergarment or something.
Exactly. The old cod piece.
Marina might have a bit of angst because she actually played somebody or his girlfriend in Death Wish 3 and she got raped and killed. So she might have a bit of angst left over from that. So might be a good idea.
Death Wish 3 based on you mean the Charles Bronson?
Yeah, she was in the Charles Bronson movie Death Wish 3 and she played one of the neighbours in the neighbourhood that I moved into. There was a couple and she was kind of like the girlfriend of this couple. And
right.
They had a bit of a role in it, and she was subsequently raped and killed, died in hospital, and that sort of like an event that kind of had this guy looking to help out Charles Bronson in his quest to clean up the neighbourhood. Well, I got to tell you something. That Kirsty character from the Death Wish films is incredibly unlucky. Gets together with someone, they die. He goes after people that killed him, and then and it happens again and happens again. It must be the most unluckiest guy on the planet.
You're absolutely right.
But no, that was one of her early roles when she went to the States.
Ah, okay.
And the only reason I've known about it for quite a while, but it sort of came fresh in my memory because I actually watched Death Wish 3 the other night, and so it was on TV and thought, cool, I'll give this a go. I've not seen it in ages, and there it was.
Oh, that's funny.
Are there any other sci-fi celebs that have committed to the movie?
Well, we have the sort of inimitable Jason Carter from Babylon 5.
Yeah, he played Marcus.
Yep.
Hey, his character in Babylon 5, I love Marcus.
Oh, yeah?
So cool.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, so he's sort of he plays a character who's going to be, as John and Grace, as we end the short film, they sort of are heading off into the, into, not the sunset, but we're actually back into the Forbidden Zone. But in the feature version of it, they have to find the Omega Man. The Omega Man is the person who basically unleashed the virus. Mm-hmm. And so in order to get to the Omega Man, they need to pass through sort of like, what do they call it? There's a name for it. It escapes me, but it's almost like, it's sort of like the city of the underworld. And so... Hades. Yes, exactly. Sort of like the black market. I don't know what they call it. There's a word that my writer friend uses to describe it, and I can't remember what it is. It's not Sin City. It's something like that. But anyway, so Jason will be playing sort of the leader, Gabriel, who basically is just another obstacle for John and Grace to get to this Omega Man. Mm-hmm. And so he's sort of a cunning manipulator, a guy who'll sort of like, sell his sister if it sort of like increases his worth. So it's I think it's a great role for him. It's, sort of all his I think he can be up to all his antics, and it'll be fun. I mean, that's sort of like the ideal budget for the film. If we can build all these fantastic sets, then it'll be a real interesting part of the script, I think.
It's too bad Charlton Heston isn't still alive. You could have had him play the Amiga Man again. You could have it.
Yes. Yeah, maybe a little reference to "Get your hands off me."
Get your stinking hands off me, you dirty ape.
Yeah. Oh man. So so we have him, and then we also have J.G. Hertzler from Star Trek Deep Space Nine.
Nice guy, I met him.
Yeah, and the only thing with that we're disappointed is that we just call him. He's got actually a really good role, but he doesn't have a name. We just call him the militia leader, and we almost feel like we're insulting him because we also have a commitment. Well, we have commitments from JG, we have it from Jason and from Marina, but we didn't even have the decency to give JG a proper name. And so we're kicking ourselves now going, yeah, he's the militia leader. That's just lame.
Well, you could actually turn that on its head a little bit, and refer to him. Everyone refers to him as a militia leader because he's actually embarrassed about his first name because it's actually Marion.
That's a great idea. Actually, yeah, maybe Gabriel, Jason Carter's character can kind of reference that, and he can just like stand there seething, wanting to kill somebody. My mother called me Marion once.
I still can't get over that. John Wayne, his first name's Marion.
Oh, I know. It's just fantastic.
Back onto the actual very, very quickly. There's a reference in your scene with Von Flores. I'm just wondering if you're going to go any further with that. But it's it actually says that your character John is kind of like a descendant of Robert E. Lee.
Yeah.
And I thought, where's this going? Because I kind of thought that's kind of like an interesting reference there. Is he? Yeah. Is he proud of being the descendant of Robert E. Lee, or does he have sort of mixed feelings about it?
I think the reason why I thought it was interesting to introduce it was because, I think it's a tale of redemption, and so to be like, to be sort of like a glorious loser, in the I guess the greatest American battle ever waged, against ourselves, right? I just thought it would be kind of interesting that he had to sort of, part of his journey is to sort of clear the family name, even though it's definitely mixed feelings because at some point, he's a hired gun. So these, the Black Dragons are sort of like the, what's the name of the private guys that went over to like Afghanistan and like Blackwater, right? So there's these special ops guys who basically they need the work. So these corporations hire these special ops guys to carry out these missions. So I think John Lee is a little sort of he's at odds with sort of like the whole motivation for taking these gigs, but sort of in this world of the future where he's guy's got to work, he's got to feed his family. He takes the job. He sort of like goes through the implant procedures because he's sort of, he has to perform. So I think that the whole, the Lee reference is basically, eventually maybe he'll have the chance to sort of clear that sort of, besmirched label, from losing that sort of, incredible Civil War battle.
I mean, I just found it quite interesting because up until the North got General Grant, Lee was kind of like the most successful general in the Civil War. So like if they hadn't have got Grant, it probably would have gone on for X amount of more years.
Yeah, and I think that and I think you're probably right. I mean, I think he was actually probably a great general. Just I'm not such a Civil War buff, but I think the odds were that I think in a longer sort of campaign, he probably would have been victorious, I think.
But I'm not reading a Civil War buff. I've just saw like the only thing the only reference I've got is I've actually read the trilogy of books by John Jakes, North and South. So, and there's not Civil War stuff in that.
Uh-huh.
So,
Yeah.
I just found that reference kind of interesting.
Yeah, well, I think what happened was when I was doing sort of like my, when we went through that transition of, me saying, all right, well, I've got to find some sort of key into this character when I took it over from the Asian American guy, Yuji. I was trying to figure out, what would be something sort of compelling to play, to have that kind of legacy in your lineage. And, just kind of like imagining what that burden must be like, to, I guess, have to, redeem, is it a redemption of, the family name? Is it, I come from a more sort of, I guess, liberal background where, I don't really understand that mindset. However, if you hang around these like military families, I don't know, it's got to be a lot of pressure, especially as a guy to kind of like live up to, whatever that is. Mm-hmm. I mean, we all have it to some degree, whether I think when it's peppered with this sort of like military sort of backdrop, I think it probably is even, it's magnified, I'm sure. And I don't know if it's something that we really need to revisit, but I don't know. It's I just found it a little compelling.
Mm-hmm. I mean, so like you could almost have a bit of a spin-off within the movie where sort of like perhaps he's sent on some sort of quest to redeem the family name, as it were.
Well, I think that there's a possibility there. I mean, it's this sort of thing where my friend was Scott Gunderson, who's from the other writer who's from the South. He said, "Come on, man." He said, "The South ain't never gonna let the Chinese come and take us over." He says. And I said, all right, but I said, just go with it, would you please?
Legend has it, General Robert Leeshock lost a testicle at a brothel shortly after the war.
Oh, that's funny.
John Lee and his quest to find the missing testicle.
Gives new meaning to the that expression on the playground. It's my ball.
What about that for a load of old bollocks?
So I guess so now what we're faced with is now we have to cast interesting parts like the Omega Man, the Thelios character that who knows, maybe we can approach LeVar down the road. So it'll be interesting to see how it unfolds.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping that you do actually manage to raise the money to make this thing, because I really enjoyed the 20 minute short, and by the end of it left me wanting more, because like I said, it just seemed like too much of a perfect ending. I was like sat there wondering, when's the other shoe gonna drop?
It's that British side again. Tragedy.
Well, what's pretty cool is that when you're shooting stuff like that, what those ghillie suits are. A ghillie suit is that camouflage suit that just blends into the the terrain.
Yeah, those are pretty cool.
They certainly are. So whenever they're walking off into the sunset, you can always just have one of those guys pop up and go, not so easily. I mean, these guys did it on the set, where you're just kind of like, guys sitting around for 20 minutes waiting to spook the crap out of someone. And it works.
If I was wearing one of those ghillie suits and I was in hiding, I'd be making obscene gestures at people I don't like, thinking, they can't see me, so.
Exactly. You've always got an out.
Yeah. But that, as you've obviously found out, I've got quite a sick sense of humour. So,
well, we need you on set then.
There you go.
For those 14-hour days.
What?
Yeah, well, I used to be an actor, you know. Used to be.
All right.
There you go.
I never went as far as getting headshots done. I did a bit of fringe theatre, but then I kind of I won't say I kind of fell out of it. I just kind of, fell into something else.
Yeah.
I'd love to sort of like do a bit again, but I won't do television or film because it's, too much faffing around and saying the same line of dialogue over and over again for the sake of
I know.
just do me head in. And the one time I had to do that, I knew my dialogue, but it got to a point where I was doing it so many times that I'd begin to sort of like to drop words and forget. And where was he at now? And he needed the prompter, sort of thing. So I wasn't used to it. I was just used to doing it one take in the theatre live, sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So that whole TV and movie thing. Say I've got a lot of respect for you guys that do it. You make it look easy, and it isn't.
No, it's a tedious, laborious, kind of painstaking process. But if you can keep it dynamic, I mean, that's what's interesting about, maybe Marx, you experienced this when you have these handheld cameras and you're just kind of like winging it. All of a sudden, it feels a little bit more or just less staid. And the whole process just feels like it's, moving and a little more dynamic than I kind of remember it, where you have a camera on sticks and just feels like, all right, let's, I like the run and gun style of, almost feels like guerrilla filmmaking.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it's a big difference between independent film and big budget TV and film.
Yeah.
And also another thing that actors are challenged with versus on the theater is that you don't do it in chronological order. You have to break it down these little pieces, and you can be all over the place chronologically, and you kind of have to remember where you're at emotionally in that moment from each day you're doing your scenes, which is, I think.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that's that different from theatre, because when you're rehearsing something in theatre, you do actually rehearse scenes out of order. So, I wouldn't say that's that much of a challenge because, when you're rehearsing a play, you can rehearse scenes out of order and rehearse them in any order, just to get the scene right. And it's only when you do the actual run through, like the full-on rehearsal, that you're doing it in order. So, I'm not sure if you've experienced that.
Yeah, no, I think there are similarities. I think that it's more of it's almost like a psychological or emotional, like what do you call it, like a organizing, and you always have to keep it sort of like in your head and go, all right, how big was that moment before, what's happening after. So I think it doesn't look very hard, but you're exhausted at the end of the day and you're like, well, what the hell was I doing that but it really is just trying to keep it in sort of in context, I guess, contextual order.
And there's always the challenge doing TV for theatre actors is making everything smaller.
Yeah.
Because in theatre everything has to be so big. You have to be able to sort of like, project your voice to a point where they hear you right at the back in the cheap seats sort of thing. Whereas if you do that, this is the voice of God.
I get it, God. I get it.
And I kind of slipped my mind a little bit because I'm so focused on your past and Earth Final Conflict, but you did a lot of soap opera work, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I imagine I don't know how you keep that kind of pace sometimes. I don't know what tricks you have to do because you have like a pretty tight schedule for filming.
Yeah, and I think that I mean, I remember, I just call that like chewing up scenery. Like, I remember doing some episode where I played this horribly, like, he was just a bad lawyer or something. And I wound up pulling this, I think I pulled this girl's hair or something like that. I kidnapped her. And then I was like, this is just, it's so over the top. It was absolutely just a great time. Because I couldn't believe how bad I was, And actually, I think some of the guys, I just another part in a short film, and these guys, I didn't realize that some of this soap opera stuff is on YouTube. And I went back and watched it, and I was like going, I didn't even think it was me. And then I remember I had to do one scene one day, and I realized they had signed me to a 6-month contract, and I really didn't understand the details. And what that means is like say they guarantee you a day and a half of work per week for 6 months.
Okay.
If they finish the day and a half times however many weeks that is, if they finish that early, you're considered done with your contract. So say it's, 40 days total. Well, once it's done with the 40 days, you could be done with 40 days in maybe 2 or 3 months. And then they sort of like let you know that, oh yeah, this is your last day or this year. And then I was really like genuinely pissed off. So I watched that scene and I'm like, oh, I'm not acting. I'm just pissed that they're done with my character. So I watched that scene and I'm just tearing up the scenery. I'm pissed. Because I thought I had a steady paycheck for 6 months. And I was like, no, there you go. You get like 2.5, 3 months and you're out.
Maybe just too good of an actor for soaps.
Well, that's what I was hoping. Yeah, that you can always twist it some way. I'm just too damn talented, I'm too damn good looking for that part. That's why I didn't get it.
You could have just spent 3 months learning your lines or something, and
yeah. I should tell them I have 3 testicles. Maybe that'll get me hired.
Yeah, that'll probably get you on the sequel to Total Recall.
Yeah. I guess that's harkening back to Liam Kincaid. He had triple helix, but he also, they gave him an extra testicle.
Yeah, so like on the soap opera where he was pulling that woman's hair and stuff like that, it's probably a Liam moment. You probably thought, oh, Taegon, cool. Taegon with hair, brilliant. Payback.
Exactly.
For the sake of those that are listening in, what's the website for the Indiegogo campaign?
Oh, well, it's www.indiegogo.com/godmachine. It's been interesting. We're doing this campaign. We've learned a lot with this campaign. It's really a lot of, as you guys know, maybe publicity, public relations with, established channels. And so I think this first campaign has really been a learning curve, with regards to Facebook, Twitter, all this other stuff. So I don't think we're really, we'd love to, be able to pull off a miracle and, be able to make this. But, this will probably be a segue into our next campaign. We'll learn as we go. And, I think we're just getting the word out. And, we're real appreciative that you guys have, taken the time to host us both at, SciFiPulse.net and GenreTainment. And we just, are really learning as we go as well. So, anything that we can do to help you guys would be, our pleasure.
Well, I will mention my show, SFP-Now, as well, because this is kind of like a collaboration between GenreTainment and SFP-Now.
Okay.
They're both on SciFiPulseRadio.com. So, Matt and I have been doing this for a while. So, we enjoy speaking to you guys. We do try to support Kickstart projects when we see them come up, so we're always open to, trying to help out if we can.
Yeah, and as a filmmaker, I know how challenging it is to get your get funding.
Yeah. So
well,
we'll just keep plugging and slugging.
Well, we wish you luck on the project.
It's been great having you on the show, Robert. It's been great having this chance to speak to you and talk to you about the project. And I'll keep the fingers crossed that you're able to make it and we're able to see it down the road.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it too. And thanks for really, what's so interesting is that for all the people who say they're going to help and back out, there are rare, few who, basically show up out of nowhere like you guys. And, you're just filled with the spirit. And, I totally appreciate, you guys reaching out because, the disappointment when people, I don't know what it is about their nature. It's like, yeah, you're shaking your head. Yes. And I know I've given you about 40 hours of my free time and you're just not giving me anything. So when you guys show up, it's like a real treat and I really appreciate it. All right, guys. Well, have a good, have a good night, Ian, and Marx, have a good rest of the day yourself.
Okay. You too. Thank you.
All right, guys.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye. Bye.